Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you my results from maximum juice maps with 5 Skittering Delirium Orbs instead of Blighted this time, so that we can compare whether Skittering or Blight are better. So the purpose of this is to pretty much decide which Delirium Orb we wanted to use and which one's the maximum for profit. So in this video we're going to be tackling exactly which one is the best, and we'll get into those details. But for starters, we have to cover off a few things, and the first thing is that I ran these maps pretty much exactly the same. We were shooting for about 11 loot tiles on average, and of course we did them on tier 14 maps. So previously I've been told that tier is vital with these things, but in my experience I couldn't actually notice the difference between tier 14 and tier 16 maps for the Scarab farming. So that's pretty interesting. But even using the tier 14 maps, we got an absolute ton of gilded Scarabs and polished Scarabs, and you'll see a pretty interesting breakdown when we get to the spreadsheet. So without further ado, let's dive into it and we'll get into the results. But first, I thought it might be cool to show you guys what the massive amount of Scarabs actually looks like in the stash tab. And this is going to lead into my first point with these things, because it is actually a little bit different to Blight, and it's not quite an apples for apples comparison. So you'll see here, I go through my stash tabs. I've pulled out the red maps because I sell them in bulk, but other than that, this is the tabs from basically when I ran. There is so many quad tabs of these Scarabs, it's completely ridiculous. And this is definitely a factor that needs to be taken into consideration. If you don't have a ton of dome tabs, or if you don't have the fragment tab, farming Scarabs probably isn't a viable option for you, unfortunately, because it just takes up so much room. So that's point number one. Point number two is when you're farming these maps, you're going to get on average around 120 to 140 Scarabs per map that you're going to have to cart out of there. So that's already 2 completely full inventories of Scarabs when you're doing it. So the thing that I'm trying to mention here is that if you die too many times, you're not going to have enough portals to get through the map. So you're probably going to need at least 3 minimum of full looting portals. That's in and out, in and out, in and out. And then you'll probably finish on the 4th with like a little bit of stuff in your inventory. So that's the thing that I noticed as the main one. And it definitely does also slow you down when you're looting these things, because there's just so many of them. That's like 140 clicks per map, and like you have to run to them, all that kind of stuff like that. So it might sound kind of dumb that you're like, damn, there's too much loot to loot. But it definitely is quite a big deal. And when you're moving these things around, like I had to move all those things out of those dump tabs, it took me about 30 or 40 minutes, just because there's so much of them to really like get through. And furthermore, there is advantages and disadvantages in selling these things, because there's so many different types, and you're going to get so many of them. You do have the bulk item kind of rule come into play. Normally players won't have many of these, and if they do have some of them, they'll have like 3 or 4. But when you have like 100, suddenly these kind of power players want to pay a little bit more to you, because it's more convenient for them to trade one person and pay a bit more than it is to trade like 100 people and buy them on a Scarab to Scarab basis. So I haven't reported this in the spreadsheet, but in reality, you're going to earn a significant more amount running these Scarabs, because you're going to sell them in bulk to players with these power strategies. For example, Sulfite Scarabs, you can see I'm actually already all out of these. Those sold so quickly, and they sold for about 50% more than market price, just because I had so many of these Sulfite Scarabs. It was completely insane. Similarly with Polished and Gilded Bestiary, these fly off the shelves, and funnily enough, Reliquary also sells for a massive amount in bulk. Important to note, I'm not actually selling the Legion ones or the Metamorph ones, also the Breach and the Harbinger ones. I'm keeping them for myself because I think that they're cool and fun to run. But some of these will also not sell. Stuff like Shaper, Polished, they're going to sell for less than a Chaos. Same with Parandus. I know I have them listed here, but I actually I'm going to delist them because it's just so cumbersome to trade 60, which is like a full inventory, for like less than 60 seat. So that is like kind of counteracts the bulk kind of rule that we have there. So you're probably going to make around like 20% more than the listed price that I have on my spreadsheet. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. Picking them up and selling them and like moving them around your stash is really tedious and annoying. But when you do sell them, because of that tedium, you do have an advantage and you can overprice things if you have a lot of them. So that's a really good point there. Moving on, let's now tackle the spreadsheet, shall we? So we'll jump in here and we're going to take a look first at these expenses because this is super interesting. After the video I made, fossil prices jumped up, as well as a few other really crazy market conditions that created the perfect storm against this strategy, believe it or not. So we will get into what I mean by that, and you're going to be able to, after this video, tell whether you should be using fractured maps to make money or not. Now, the ironic thing is, even with the perfect storm against this strategy, everything went wrong. All of the stuff went in the wrong direction for making this a really good strategy to do. I still did make 23.5 exalts with basically no good unique drops. So even if you kind of like have a really bad thing, just everything stacked against it, you're still going to make money. It just depends on how much money you will make based on market conditions. So let's get into those market conditions and whether or not you want to be running these. And then we'll get into the Scarab deal and we'll talk about how many we got and the breakdown of them. So first rule is with fractured fossil farming, if exalts are higher, so they're a higher price or they go up, you will be earning less money. The reason for this is that fractured fossils are always sold in exalts and they're never sold in chaos. So because of that, if the exalt price goes up, you're paying more chaos on average for your fractured fossil, but most of the things that we actually sell, like blighted maps, oils, scarabs, sell for chaos. So the actual value of those things compared to the price that you're buying in at decreases. So if exalts go down, this becomes more profitable. So you need to keep that in mind. If exalts are high, you'll be making less money. If exalts are low, you'll be making more money. Now, this isn't true for everything. If you, for example, do the breach one and you get pure Chayulas or Chayula stones or something like that, you sell those for exalts. So it is kind of a bit more comparative. But the other thing that happened is that small currency prices also went down. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about fusings, I'm talking about alchemies, and I'm talking about stuff like Vile Orbs and Regrets. Those things tanked. They went down by about half over the weekend, which is really crazy because that's where a large amount of our money did come from. Now, a lot of other things haven't gone down, but this is one thing that has. So when those smaller currencies go down, that is also going to be a hit on our currency because that also gets converted into chaos, which versus exalts, which is what we're paying, is a bad equation. So both of those things happened, which was kind of a bit unfortunate. But in addition to that, fractured fossil prices actually went up. Obviously because everyone started realizing that it's so much fun and it's really cool to do. Now this actually isn't the case anymore. After we head into the weekday here, fractured fossil prices are actually going back down, meaning that we're actually probably returning to a point where you can probably make 40 or 50 exalts profit just by doing this because they're going down to 2.3 to 2 exalts, which is very low. When I did my video, there were about 360 chaos. So they're actually heading back down towards that territory now, meaning it will be again more profitable, even though the exalt price has gone up. And because we dropped raw exalts, this actually might become more profitable. But of course, let's lead into the scarabs now. The one thing you need to remember is we need to be picking the right Delirium orb for the right time. So you can see here I made 23.58 exalts profit. Given the massive disaster of the economy fighting against us over the weekend, this is actually not too bad. And I did realize all this profit and a bit more because I was bulk selling these scarabs. So I made probably about 30 exalts profit, which was pretty good. Not too bad for 20 maps. But moving on, let's take a look at these scarabs now and see how they stack up against Blight when we did it before all of the market shenanigans. So we made 7,236 chaos in the scarabs, assuming we sold everything at PoE Ninja prices. Now this is the only fair comparison you can make. really, in my opinion, because if you run like one of these maps, you're not going to have bulk and you're going to have to sell them at those prices. But if you do run bulk, then you're probably not going to be bothered selling all the lower tier ones, but you're going to sell the higher tier ones for more. So the only way we can accurately measure this is using PoE Ninja prices, and that's what it came out as, 7,236. So versus Blight, this is actually a little bit lower, but of course, we all saw what happened to blighted map prices. Those things are very subject to change depending on how many people are running them and how many people are pushing them into the economy. So you really, really want to look at which one is going to be the best for you. So the real point here is, how many Scarabs did we get? So in 20 maps, we got 2,413 Scarabs. Damn, that is a lot of Scarabs to loot. But it is also just completely ridiculous. I think that is more Scarabs than I've ever looted, used, or even seen in the entire of my PoE like playing history. And I got that in 20 maps, so it's absolutely insane. You're gonna get more Scarabs than most people have ever even like looted or touched or anything like that. You're gonna be so crazy and just bulked up with Scarabs. So yeah, that's a lot of damn Scarabs. So let's quickly look at the breakdown here. It looks like it's completely evenly weighted all along the line. I got almost a complete equal amount of rusted, so it's around about 120 rusted Scarabs you can expect to get, which is a lot of rusted Scarabs. Now this is for T14, remember, and it's 11 loot tiles. So on polished, I got around roughly 60 of each type, a little bit over, a little bit under on some of these. For some reason I got really like not a lot of Harbinger, but I think that's just an outlier. And for Gilded, I got on average around 20 to 25, with some going as high as 30, but some going as low as 16, 14. So pretty interesting there, pretty uniform across the board, which is very, very good for us, because that means this is a very consistent strategy, meaning that you're going to get pretty much the same amount every single time. And because it's equally weighted, if you run enough of them, you will basically earn the same amount like on this spreadsheet pretty much every single time, which is really, really, really good. And it makes it very, very easy to predict how much you're going to make. So super, super cool there. And let's tie this all up with a little bit of a rule. So of course, we've only tested 2 types of Delirium Orbs, and there is just really so many of them to choose from. So we've tried Blighted and Skittering. Both of these have been extremely profitable, given you tackle them at the right time. Of course, you don't want to do something if everything on the chart is looking red, like blighted maps. Make sure you come onto PoE Ninja and you take a look at the market first. You can see already though that the blighted map economy is starting to recover. They've gone up by another 5C, so it's starting to move back to where it was, which means that the market is starting to soak up all those blighted maps that we pushed into it, and it might be ready for another smash later on in the league, which is pretty interesting. But with the Skittering, Scarabs are pretty unique in that so many people use them that they can probably pretty much take a battering all league long, and there will be like an infinite amount of people buying them so that you can get rid of them. So Skittering is very, very powerful. That it can take pretty much a complete battering, everyone doing it for as long as you can, because so many people use these Scarabs, it's probably going to be profitable no matter what. The only thing that you're going to need to check is that you're making sure that you're making enough money versus the fractured fossil price that you're paying, which is super, super important. Now that's going down, so you're pretty much in the clear as long as it's under 2.5 exalts. Hopefully it stays that point, but where are we gonna move next? So the next thing I want to take a look at is obscured Delirium Orbs, and that will be the next point of testing, and you guys can expect a video from that, or you can catch it live on Twitch. So very, very interesting. Make sure you check it out before you start fracturing and all that, which one you want to do. You can use my numbers, so it's about 200 blighted maps per 20, and about, you know, those ratios I mentioned earlier for the Scarabs. And with that info, you guys should be able to make quite a bit of currency, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.